Hello and welcome everyone to this third episode of the Sports Post Lockdown
It's 15 hours.
seminar webinar series. I am Ayaz Miman. This series is presented by Gain Access Sports and Entertainment and Sports Power and powered by branded events. So let me introduce the topic that we are going to discuss today. Is the episode 3 of this series, and the subject that we are addressing today, the issue that we are addressing today is impact on the business of cricket. And we all know how important this is, not only in the Indian context, but globally. So what is this context? After months of lockdown across continents to, to curb the spread of this virus, as we know, we're all battling against it. We've all been locked down and stuff. Sport is starting to make some comeback. There's been some glimmer of hope, some life that is being shown, starting with the Bundesliga League in Germany, which started on May 16th, not too long back. But it's given hope that other sports will also kind of revive themselves. For cricket, of course, which is under discussion today, the crucial aspect is how, when, and what will it take for cricket to revive itself. Now, what we've got coming up in July is a couple of series in England, which could provide a template. Remember that the West Indies and Pakistan are scheduled to tour there for a series of matches in July. So while the English season may start in June, hopefully, the international season is going to commence in July. Uh, there's a three-test series against the West Indies and against Pakistan, as well as ODIs, and then there's matches between Australia against Australia and Ireland. So lots of action promised in England in July, which could be the forerunner to what's happening or what is likely to happen in the rest of the cricket world. One of the things that is being talked about very strongly and very importantly is biosecure environment. Now, what does this mean? Because it's very crucial to the plans of the respective boards as well as the ICC. The ECB, the England Cricket Board, is looking at having a pool of 30 cricketers stay together for a stretch of 9 weeks. Hear this carefully. While they play the home test series against the West Indies and then Pakistan, 30 players staying together for 9 weeks while these two series are played. And the reason is obvious, so that this is almost like these players are quarantined amongst themselves. And, and therefore against the rivals, and you don't have the threat of community spread, etc., etc. Matches will be played at only two stadiums, and players will be housed in nearby hotels as they stay away from families and whoever else is attached to them uh, for that period of time. 23rd June is when the English players will gather, with the series against West Indies getting underway. 8 July, I think, is the date. And the West Indies Cricket Board has promised that a 25-member squad will leave for England on June 8, complete the quarantine period, get some match practice before the test series. Now, look how elaborate this is becoming, because once you land up there, it's not that next day you go in for net practice and you start playing a first-class match or a warm-up match and get into an international match. You have to have a quarantine period. And this is obviously an area of hardship that everybody has to live through. The same will apply for Pakistan, which is also set to tour England in July to play 3 tests and 3 T20 internationals, again in a biosecure environment, with the PCB giving its approval to the English counterparts during a video link meeting last Friday. So, what does this mean for cricket? Obviously, it means that action is back, and it has to be performed under the aegis of the ICC's Back to Cricket guidelines, which were released last week. Now, how they work out, what needs to be done, will they be tweaked as we go along, as the season unfolds? We'll have to just wait and see. But right now, what is critical and what is of crucial importance to everybody in this ecosystem is that some action is promised. So, just to set the context again, give it a sharper definition. This webinar, which you have logged into, is being held just a day before the crucial ICC board meeting, which is tomorrow. That is May 28th. And we are just a day away. And some clear indication of where international cricket is headed, particularly the T20 World Cup, which is scheduled to be played in Australia in October, uh, from October 18th, actually, if you get the date right, if I get the date right, will it be played or not? Or will it give way to something else? In fact, more pertinently, will it give way to the ICC as is being speculated? There are problems in commencing, cricket, as I mentioned, even in England, but even more so in Australia and for a tournament like the ICC World T20. The problem is not just flying in 16 teams into Australia, where there are strict quarantine rules in play, but also conducting an event of this magnitude, this stature, behind closed doors. That means no spectators in the ground, which will mean that sponsors may potentially shy away. Gate money obviously is hit badly. Television rights may not be as lucrative as they are for the IPL. So therefore, how is kind of revenue accounted for? It may be, all this offers enough reason to push the T20 World Cup to 2022. That's being widely speculated. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Which of course now brings me to bring the spotlight on the IPL. And may I put it most kindly or most obviously, the $1 billion question: will the IPL T20 slot, the T20 season, come into the window vacated by the World T20, or what is the option available? Will it look at the ramifications of the IPL not being played? There could be a $600 million loss that's being speculated, which is close to 4,000 crore or 4,500 crore rupees. It's not about Indian cricket. BCCI may have the resources and the financial heft and muscle, maybe, to absorb it. It's not small money, but maybe the BCCI has. But can the rest of the cricket world absorb such a loss to the IPL? Because remember, India supports 75, provides 75% of the revenue, the eyeballs, the following for the sport, etc., etc. So there's a lot riding on the IPL and what's going to happen. And therefore, I'm just contextualizing what may come up or will certainly come up in the ICC meeting tomorrow. Without further ado, let me introduce our panelists today, who are all big dads in their own respective fields, in their own respective areas. But more than anything else, they understand not just sports, but they also understand the business of sport. And that's very crucial when we are discussing, how cricket will unravel post COVID-19, and how long it will take. So what we've got on our panel today are Yannick Colasso, co-founder FanCode. I don't really need to elaborate further on his credentials. He's been with sports for over maybe 2.5, 3 decades, with cricket, with basketball, and of course now venturing into a digital platform which holds so much promise across the globe. We've also got Dheeraj Malhotra, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Delhi Capitals, one of the franchises in the Indian Premier League. And need I say that they've actually been making a lot of news because of the things that they're trying to do new, afresh. So I'm sure he's got a lot to say about how he sees the future unfolding. And then we've got Joy Bhattacharya, who's the CEO of Pro Volleyball League, but it's not his only calling card. He's also been associated with cricket for as long as I can remember. ESPN, he's on Crick Buzz, he's a pundit, he's an organizer, he's everything, really. So before I really get down to the brass tacks of cricket, I just want, guys, what have you been up to? I mean, Yannick, FanCode, so much action promised. Till March, it was looking like you were poised for this big breakthrough, and then suddenly you got this dampener coming in. How do you see, what's been your activity so far in the last 2.5 months? We've all been under lockdown. Have you just kind of put the blanket over your head and said, let this pass, or have you been doing something else? Dheeraj, we all were preparing for the IPL, and then suddenly it's gone. We don't know where it's headed. Maybe later this year, we don't know. But so what have you been up to? And Joy, in terms of just understanding an overview of what's been happening in this period where we've all been so severely constrained by not being able to do what we should be doing on the field, on the action. But at the same time, we've all been alive and active online. So let's hear from you guys. Yannick, you first.
Sure, thanks, Ayaz. It's great to be here with you guys. Right, I think the positives and the negatives of being co-founding a tech company. The positives are that because everything you build is in the cloud, the ability to actually work and technologically continuing working, and we've been working from home, and all our engineers have been working from home the entire time. The negative is, but we've actually been working and building our product a lot more in the last few months. That all my friends are sitting at home and watching movies now. So that's a bit of a bummer. Yeah, you're actually working hard, but I think it's been great from a business perspective. I think we're fortunate that we are able to do a lot of work during this lockdown. And I think from a strategic point of view, it's also been at the right time in our product kind of roadmap that we're able to look at something like this has happened, and we're able to actually sit back and say, how do we make adjustments to the opportunities that the changing face of sport is going to be for consumers going forward. And so it's been a really, really interesting time, a busy time. And between that and spending time with my kids and family, it's been, I think, a really rewarding time also.
Fantastic. Thanks, Yannick. Yannick, I think, this aspect of spending time with family has been a recurring theme, whoever I speak to, and I'm sure it's true with your friends when you speak to them. So Dheeraj, are you, in sync with what Yannick is saying? And particularly, you must have been looking forward to, Delhi Capitals making some, a big headway in this year's edition, and then suddenly now everything has been, breaks have been enforced. So what have you been up to?
Professionally, absolutely. We had a great season last year, and we were 16 days away from our first match. So we were actually geared up. In about 3-4 days, the team would have flown. We had a camp scheduled to start on the 18th of March. The whole team was coming in together on the 18th, except for a few who were on Indian duty. So we were actually looking forward to the season, and we were hoping that we could continue from where we left off last year. So it's kind of a momentum loss that I think we had. But we were quite gung-ho about our chances, and as well as the way IPL was shaping up. Personally, as Yannick said, we've all been on the road for at least 10 months a year. So to just sit back, be at home, attend Zoom classes with my kids. So personally, that's what's been happening.
Yeah. And you, Joy? I mean, I know you're not just a cricket buff. You also head a volleyball league, and you've been you're a fanatic, basketball fanatic. Have you been watching The Last Dance, Michael Jordan's?
Yeah, I've been watching. That's actually one of the things I did catch up with, The Last Dance, which is quite an amazing series. And I'm so happy that ESPN was supposed to use a lot of the footage to make a documentary in '98, which they finally didn't, and which is why this was virgin footage left for them. It's an amazing product. But also very interesting things. There was Smriti Mandhana and Jemima are doing a show, and they wanted to do a show, and they were talking to us, and so we helped them put together their own show, and that's doing really well, and that's really fun because the kind of energy they bring to it, and what they talk about is fantastic. The other thing is, with the Go Sport Foundation, I was doing a couple of seminars with athletes about their life stories.
Yeah.
And some of those stories you have to hear, seem to be believed. There's this one athlete who was telling us that she wanted to be a shooter. So she went to school and she took a shot once. It was a bullseye. She didn't have money for a gun. So her dad said that if she did well in her 12th, she'd buy a gun. So for 2 years, she'd go to her room, pick up a 1.5 kg brick and hold out her hand like that to practice the weight of a pistol 2 years before she actually got a weapon in her hand. Wow. So some of the stories outside cricket are so amazing, and it's just fantastic to have an opportunity to help tell them. So yeah, it's been pretty interesting, other than waiting for and all the domestic chores haven't hurt with the weight. So at least I've lost 4 or 5 kgs in trying to mop the floor.
Great. It's lovely to have all three of you guys here, because you bring to not just loads of experience in the sports industry, but also a passion for sports, which is frankly is such a delight to see, because not just administration but passion to run concurrently is something that one doesn't see often in the sports ecosystem. So without much ado, let me get down to what we have to ask you guys today, and I'll start with Joy. So Joy, you know, ideally, the concerns of the athlete are supposed to be the core consideration in any sporting activity. And you got the ICC's back to cricket guidelines. Now, how to go about doing it. When you read it, you don't know whether it's in sync with how we have understood cricket, or is it actually diametrically opposite? Will it make for a good sporting contest or not? If you stop people from using, say, spit and saliva and spittle on the ball, and a lot of bowlers have contested that and said, it's going to make it a one-way contest. Where does it leave us? What's your opinion?
See, I think what is the ICC is doing right now is that they've sort of gone to the side of the pendulum, which is favoring safety. And I think the most important thing to remember in this situation is eventually these are guidelines, not rules. This is not an ICC rule. It's a guideline right now as to how they feel cricket should be run in this period. I frankly there are many issues. So for example, let me take out the one about saliva, which I find very interesting. So you have a situation where you have actually now effectively quarantined 30 players together.
Yeah.
And you have effectively, say, quarantined the opposing team as well. Okay. So whether I lick a ball, touch it, put it down, and then I bowl with it, as long as it's not going to one of 5,000 spectators in the audience who I don't know about, in what way is the ball more dangerous when it is still moving around in this closed environment is something that I don't quite understand. So my sense is what's going to happen is their worry is that, one positive case and this will all go back to zero. So let's be more careful. Let's start very gradually. Let's make the rules very strict. And let's get cricket going with 1, 2, 3 series without any infection. And then maybe I'll start changing the rules. I'll start letting go a bit. I'll say, okay, I think that's the policy that they're adopting, because I think what they fear more than anything else is that I want to be so strict that I'm not going to give it a single chance to impact, especially in these early first 2, 3 series, when the whole world's eyes are upon it and people are saying, what's going to happen? Are they going to do this right? Are they going to do it safely? So they need these 2, 3 series to go, and that's why I think they're being over careful.
So Joy, before I come to the other panelists, very quick question, and I must throw this in because I was just reading this morning Rahul Dravid's opinion on rushing into international cricket or competitive cricket. He says, what if one player tests positive? Are you going to call off the tournament or the match, or what's the recourse? How do you react to that?
Yeah, look, I think that's exactly what all these guys, that's what ICC is scared of as well. So rushing back, see, the truth is that, and may I say this, that yes, there is a point of saying that you can't rush back, but there will not be a point in the immediate future where you're going to be 100% sure nothing is happening.
That is
at whatever point in time you take it, it is a calculated risk. What you can try and do is fight against that risk as much as possible. But at any time, 2 things I want to say that, whatever little I'm learning from epidemiologists and the experts who are working with this, till there's a cure or a vaccine which absolutely works, which may be 16 to 18 months away, this is not going to go away. They're going to stop.
We have to learn to live with it.
Fits and start. It's like airport security after terrorism. We just got used to it. We got used to standing out there in line and having our water thrown away, because that's the way the world works now. I mean, we can't ever go back to a state where the kind of checking that used to happen in the early 90s happened. Yeah. So look, we will take a chance at whatever point. And my point is, moment you see it's a healthy enough risk to take, because you can't delay it too much longer. You're going to get paralyzed at a particular point. Boards are going to freeze. Funds are going to run out. India is the richest cricket board in the world. The ECB is one of the richest cricket boards in the world. If these guys can't bring it on at some point in time with a reasonable amount of security, the rest of the world can't even think about it. So I think it needs to be done. You can question whether this series is the right one or not, but they will have to take that chance.
So I'll before I go to Dheeraj and Yannick, let me just put my point of view across. I think that 2 factors are very crucial in reviving cricket. One is tradition, the other is revenue. So where England becomes crucial because they've been the kind of standard bearers of tradition, which the sport upholds. The other is the market and the exploitation, the monetization, the revenue which India is. So I think both need to run concurrently, and therefore I think the England season in July is going to be crucial. But that's my take. Let me move on to Dheeraj. And so Dheeraj, so fan engagement, which is so crucial in any sport today. Without it, you can't survive, and especially if you're a franchise owner or driving a franchise. So normally you would have been spending this time, IPL downtime, with the aim of building your fan base. Building a fan army, volunteer program, etc., etc. And therefore, all of that has also taken a hit because we are all in the lockdown. So, what does the post-lockdown world look for you on this front? How are you going to navigate? Suppose it opens up or it doesn't. How are you going to navigate this very uncertain territory?
So, that's very pertinent at this time, Ayaz. Last year, we had a new ethos. We started off afresh, and our focus was primarily on fans. We strongly believed as a team and as a franchise that the fan is our 12th man. And Delhi, the typical problem in Delhi is a very multicultural city. So it's not based from one region or one city. So it was very difficult for us to kind of get the fan base that we were hoping for. Also, for whatever reasons, our performances weren't too great in the history of IPL. So we didn't have the kind of fan base that we were hoping for. But it has been increasing. The fans were coming in. What's changed now is that it's been a total digital approach. It's been technological innovations for us, and we're trying to reach our fans through the personal lives of our players. During IPL, it's more stats, it's more what happened at the game, what the players did. But this time, we're using to make sure that they know more about their stars. They know the human aspect of their stars. So we see, like, you have a Shikhar with his family, you have a Rahane with his new baby, and that's the kind of thing that we're trying to get the fan to say, look, we are as much, we're going through the same problems that you are. We're just trying to stay positive. And so we kind of relate with the fans, trying to kind of build a rapport, build a common ground. And it's actually helped us because we've seen our fan base grow, at least in social media. We've seen our fan base grow in, the kind of engagements and the responses that we're having. Again, we'll definitely miss not having the fans in the stadium, if at all the matches happen without the fans being there.
Yeah. So this brings me to Yannick, who actually was instrumental in developing it, from the grassroots basketball in India, because you ran the NBA, Yannick, for several years before turning entrepreneur. And building the talent quotient was a big part of it. Obviously, it's not cricket, so the hardship may have been a little greater. But obviously, the processes are not going to be vastly different in the end objective, because you want it to become, valuable, you want it to be, relevant, pertinent. So, which brings me to the crisis, which is facing the feeder system of the cricket ecosystem. Nothing is happening right now. There's no activity. Whether it's the IPL or any other age group, whatever level you want, it's all a black hole. So, how do you see the scenario after we emerge? Things start happening, international cricket starts taking place from the point of view of the organizers, the promoters, even the players, and not forgetting the fans.
Yeah, so I think from a talent perspective, right? I think the like with everything that this has taught us, you have to be innovative and creative, right? I mean, Joy had a great story of a shooter practicing without equipment to actually build skills and build things to actually do that. And I think it's the same with everything. You've got to sports. Performers, sports athletes are primarily athletes. One of the most important things is keeping yourself fit, building certain motor movements that you want, which will make you successful and more efficient in the sport that you play. So you can continue doing those things, whether you're a high-level athlete or whether you're just starting off. The challenge obviously comes in terms of a competitive environment, because especially in team sports, right? And you can practice as much as you want on your own. You will only improve in team sports when you actually play with others and you play in a competitive environment. So I think that from a athlete development is going to hopefully only be temporarily stunted. And from a actual talent pool development, given that it's a few months, and you're assuming that if international events now start happening, you're going to start the feeder system. I assume will start happening soon also. I think the one interesting thing that this is going to throw up in the last few years, has always been this larger push towards democratizing talent selection, right, to technology solutions. Whether it's training or whether it's discovering talent. So
Yeah.
I think this will actually give that a flip. And if there are products available in the US and in India which actually help both train young budding talent through either personalized or templatized digital training programs, as well as help them be discovered through talent selection on like Huddle does in the US. There are companies like Kalo More in India, with Jatin Paranchpaya started, which does it really well here. I think that's going to give an opportunity for that, because that will help it grow at scale. So it will also help families in terms of letting your child go out and play in a tournament without having all these protections in place. It'll help that start a lot quicker, I think.
So I need to throw a quick question at you about the fans also, because you've dealt so
Right.
much with cricket earlier in your earlier avatar before basketball. So, once a crisis comes, and we've had this crisis in the past, not a pandemic, but we had a match fixing crisis. So when the bounce back happens, how do you see do the fans come back stronger, revitalized, or they are feeling their way through? How does it happen? How does it pan out?
I think it all depends on what stakeholders. Eventually, it's the product the stakeholders put out, right? The reality is that what's going to come out is going to be significantly different from what fans have been used to and have got addicted to. It's going to be significantly different. So it's going to be up to the stakeholders, the federations, the media partners, the sponsors, the players, to make sure that the new and evolved product is something which provides the same level of better entertainment than the previous product did. Because the reality, it's not just cricket competing against football, or it's cricket competing against movies, competing against Netflix.
Yeah.
For the mind share entertainment.
So I seem to have lost Yannick for a little bit. So let me move on to Joy. Joy, can you hear me? Joy?
Hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm just now going to put you on the scanner a bit. You delivered India's last big multi-nation fixture, 2017 FIFA Under-17 World Cup. And you got a greater understanding of infrastructural realities in the Indian context, So now what we're looking at in cricket, even if you take the English template, is 30 players confined to 2 cities or 2 venues, 2 hotels, etc., which we mentioned in the preamble for this webinar. How would that translate for the next bilateral series that India hosts? Now, I'll just bring you to this point, that in a recent interview, Ravi Shastri, the chief coach of the Indian team, mentioned that BCCI should pay more emphasis to bilateral contests and to domestic competitions. So even if it is a Ranji Trophy to be played starting from September, mid-September or early October, and you don't have too many venues available, what are the hardships? How do you think they could go about doing this?
Look, it's I think 2 things. One is that what has happened is that the cost of playing, there's a certain cost to playing sports safely, which is currently the cost that extra cost that we are paying. There's a cost we didn't pay before. So the cost means that in terms of security, in terms of the number of grounds, in terms of the lack of movement, all these are basically increasing the cost of the product. Now, the only one plus that India has over maybe any other cricket playing country in the world, even Australia and England especially, is that 90% of our revenue is television based and advertising based, not seats, bums on seats in the stadium. Okay, it's hugely skewed towards the television and the sponsorships. So that's one plus point, that the loss of money is not going to be that much. It's the loss of atmosphere which is costing me more than the loss of money. Now, two things that you have to do that it's not going to be possible. The funny thing is that in most sport, when you sort of bring back sport after a really difficult time, whatever it is, whether it's a pandemic or it's a war, world war or something, actually normally what happens is sport starts at the lowest level first.
Yeah.
Because you start playing with village matches, green matches, district matches, first class matches, and then the test matches come back. That's what happened after the First World War, the Second World War in India, after independence. Here, strangely enough, because of the cost that it requires, you're actually going to have to start at the very top. Because the kind of money required to ensure safety at the top level is only possible at the top level. I mean, if you ask me honestly, realistically, the first tournament that we should try and mount is an IPL tournament, because that's financially, there's so much money in it that kind of money can go a longer way towards arranging security than even a bilateral series. That's my belief. And that's the way I would look at it, saying that it's a weird inversion of what normally happens, that you slowly edge your way back to top level action. Here you have to start at the top level, which sets an example, because the top level is the only level which has the money to try and make it as secure as possible. Is it still 100% secure? No, nothing is going to be 100% secure. But it is as secure as money can throw as a problem.
Let me take the question, an extension of this to Dheeraj. What you say is right, Joy. But at the same time, there are impediments. So Dheeraj, apart from the big three, which is India, England, and Australia, frankly, cricket is in the ICU, right? Is in the intensive care unit, because all the other boards are kadka. They have no money. So how can the BCCI step up to lead the world out of this, not just the COVID-19 crisis, but that's the first challenge, and after that, to financial good health. Because if it's going to be a three versus the rest, there will always be a huge political power play, and it's not going to make life happy for the sport, and if imagine if out of 12 boards, conceivably, three are making money, like in any business. Somebody's making supernormal profit, somebody's making normal profit, somebody's just about alive, and the others are all bankrupt or dying. So it can't survive, the sport. What do you think? How do you think that one can emerge from this?
Absolutely agree with you, Ayaz. It's just that I think there's just big two left now, with Australia having invested as they did. They're also quite broke right now, so it just leaves BCCI and ECB. But having said that, BCCI has been the strongest, most powerful board in terms of when it comes to revenues, when it comes to market share. I mean, even if you look at the ICC revenues, there's Star and other broadcasters, sponsors, they pay more when India is involved, or with what the rights that are based in India, than for other places. In fact, the last cycle, out of the 100%, I think 80% was for India and 20% for the rest of the world. So everybody knows where India stands. It's just, I think this is the time where every board will have to, sit in the boardroom, come to decisions, basically help each other out. India, as Joy also mentioned, India will, because 90% of the revenues are TV broadcast based, India will still manage. England should be okay, but the others will not be able to survive. I mean, you're hearing stories from big boards like Australia, West Indies, South Africa. They're all struggling. They're all totally in a cash crunch. So my thing is what India said to Australia, that they're going to Australia in December if everything works out. So that kind of, everybody wants to play India right now, because the minute India goes there, suddenly the TV revenues go up, the sponsorship goes up, bums on seats. I mean, India's playing, stadium is full. We've seen in other countries, there are more fans of India than the local country playing.
Yeah.
In fact, 2009, when we went to IPL in South Africa, it felt like we were playing at home, because that's the kind. So my thing is, I think the BCCI should now be a little magnanimous, sit with all the boards, and do more international series. Try to make sure that there's more revenue generated for other boards. First, after IPL, though, my priority will still always be IPL, because IPL is 40% of the revenue that the cricketing world generates.
Yeah.
And whatever IPL makes, all the players that come in, the big money is also certain, not very big, but a certain percentage of that is also given to the boards. Each international player that plays, the boards gets a certain kind of money.
Correct.
The bigger the player, the more revenue for the boards. So I think everybody needs to now not say, sit together and not try to be selfish and say, no, I want to, my calendar. Should be now, we should sit together and have a world calendar for a year or two where everybody gets equal opportunity. And so the revenues are, people are able to generate revenues. Obviously, ICC will also have to play a role, but I think the biggest factor in that would be BCCI.
Okay, but that's interesting. So I must bring Yannick in here because FanCode is currently live streaming the Vinci Premier T10 League from the Caribbean. Now, is there a flip side or another side to this argument, Yannick? This is a tournament that otherwise, normally, if the IPL was going on, would have had virtually no play in the mind space of the people, even the most ardent fans. So, is there a new kind of order emerging that, because there's so much of digital play now in the world, and frankly, the appetite for consuming sport is unending, is just insatiable. So, is there a sign that, there is opportunities for engagement with cricket in whatever format, even if the big league comes back, and there will be some fans who are consuming even the smallest tournament possible.
Yeah, I actually think that, even pre-COVID, right, there's always been, I think what digital has allowed sport globally to do, and also in cricket, is that it removes the constraints and the restraints that linear broadcast has, right? So if a broadcast network wants to show 5 different games at the same time, they have to create 5 new channels, right? And digital doesn't have that constraint. So you're opening it up to say that as long as I'm allowing a fan to discover, whether it's 1,000 fans or 1,000,000 fans, as long as a set of people who want to, consume a certain piece of content, I'm going to create a platform which will allow that. And that's how we actually came up with FanCode, in a sense that we found that, the traditional media distributors were focused on the larger properties, which is obviously ones which give them the highest return in ad-funded business model, primarily ad-funded. So I think if you looked at even when we've done the Bangladesh Premier League, we've done the Zanzi Premier League, we've done the Super League, we've done other events pre-COVID, the engagement from fans was tremendous. And even now when we're doing this Vinci T10 League and we're looking at doing other events around this, I think the consumption of this it's not going to be 100 million people, but it's going to continuously be fans. I mean, a cricket fan is a cricket fan, right? You want to be able to consume cricket. We've got so many avid cricket fans in this country that the ability to provide them with various forms of levels of cricket, whether it's domestic, whether it's at international level, I think has a market for it. So I think consumption is going to be driven by user requirements, what a user wants. And the big events will continue to be big, but the opportunity for other sports properties to actually build on the fan base created by these big events will continue to grow.
Great. So, I mean, that's an interesting insight. So, obviously, what you're looking at is a whole new, matrix for consumption of sports. Not just cricket, I would imagine. While cricket is the predominant sport in India, but it could apply to any other sport. So Joy, so let me now kind of pin you down on, specific. What do you think is going to happen with the World T20? We're talking of IPL vis-a-vis the T20 World Cup. And maybe one will have to give way to the other. And most likely the T20 World Cup will have to make way for the IPL for reasons that everybody has been advocating, including you. We've got the meeting coming up tomorrow of the ICC. Some decision may emerge, it seems, or perhaps will emerge. And there's a lot of, cricket politics involved, etc., etc. Do you think that the postponement of the T20 World Cup is, inevitable? Is it, and if it is so, is it desirable? Should Australia then get a chance maybe in 2022 because India has got the chance in 2021? There's a lot that is at play in the meeting tomorrow. What's your take on it?
Sorry, my apologies. I was muted. Two things out here, very definitely they come across. One is the fact that let's for a moment park IPL away. Let's put IPL away. There's no IPL. This doesn't exist. would it be possible to hold the T20 World Cup in October if there was no IPL? So first, let's handle that part of the question. If it is not possible, if it is definitely that it's not going to be possible to do it, okay, you have also sold to broadcasters around the world. The ICC has sold broadcasters around the world on the basis of a certain number of India series happening. So you can't move India in 21. So then your only option is basically to go to 22. And the way the ICC has to look at it, and I know there's a lot of politics going on, seems to be a lot of unpleasant mails flying around. It's difficult because the actual documents are not in front of us. But I mean, for example, my belief is that if I go and put a gun to India is simply my biggest market and the biggest cricket board in the world. If I put a gun to India's head and says, if you don't get tax deductions now, I'm going to move the tournament, I'm going to do something, India will say, cool, no problems. Why don't you first explain that to the sponsors and broadcasters who paid that much money for a tournament? So my belief is that if you ever want to posture, you should posture in a situation where you have the wherewithal to go through this threat. Otherwise, it's not a great idea. So I hope that's not the case. Having said that, I just have a simple belief. What the ICC should decide is, can I do a T20 in October in Australia or not? It's not for them to bother about or worry about whether the IPL, the BPL, the Bangladesh Premier League or anything is held at that point in time. It's not germane to their conversation. Can I hold it in October? If I can't hold it in October, it doesn't matter who takes my slot because I can't do it.
Yeah.
And if I can't do it, I can't move India in 21 because India in 21 is crucial to my broadcasters. Then I have to go 22 because Australia has to be taken in that cycle. So look, that's what it is. Shorn of all politics, that's what, the straight facts look like. How they'll play out, I'm hoping sense will prevail over belligerence over the next few days. That's all.
Great. I think that's a very pragmatic way of looking at it, Joy. Just a reminder for guys who are on this webinar that you can throw questions at Yannick and Joy and Dheeraj. We'll have some allowance for that, but I must quickly run through some of the questions that I've already got for them to ask them. So let me just quickly move to Dheeraj and ask him this. It's a bit of a prickly situation or a question for him. So if we get into a situation, Dheeraj, where the IPL is played in October, November, and there's no World T20, for whatever happens, IPL is played there. And it may be a very restricted IPL in terms of movement, etc. You might have a 3-venue or 2-venue setup, and perhaps with very little sponsorship coming in from, ground sponsorship, ticketing, etc. Because people may be fearful, sponsors may not have. They're all suffering financially in their own way because of COVID-19. Your talent costs don't change, etc. Your fixed costs don't change. Are you okay with all of that? Or do you see, hey, maybe this is not worth it now, maybe we should look at it next year?
As if you look at any franchise, the three basic sponsorship revenues that you have, the three broad headings, one would be the broadcast and the central sponsorship, which is the biggest pool. Then is your team sponsorship, which includes your uniform and your various spots on the jersey. And one is merchandise and beverage sponsor and other kind of partnership. And then the last is match day sponsorship, which is your ticket sales and hospitality. Now, if I was to split these three, then I think 60% would be the broadcast and central sponsorship, or maybe 65. About 20% to 25% would be sponsorship, and 10 to 15 would be your ticketing match day revenue.
Yeah.
So technically, as a franchise, I would rather go for a tournament because I'm still getting 80 to 85% of my revenue. We would definitely like to have the IPL instead of not having it. Also, what happens with sport is once you start having sport, the sense of normalcy starts coming around. The positivity, the positive factor that it builds. So people watching it and looking at it is, it just gives you a very optimistic view of life. The things are getting back to normal.
Yeah.
Second, in India, all of us have watched the English Premier League. We are all big fans of either Man U or Arsenal, Liverpool. But how many of us really go to the stadium to watch them? I know kids who know every statistics of every player in Manchester, everything, who've never been to Manchester in their life. So we could still live by without having anyone in the stadium to begin with. Hopefully not in the I hope it doesn't become a norm, but in these conditions and what's happening right now, I think we'll be very happy we can have the tournament irrespective of whether the fans can get in or not. Because they'll be watching it on TV. The sponsors will still get their value because, like you saw in the Bundesliga, I think people don't even know what a Bundesliga. Everybody was watching football because it was a only live sport in the world at that point of time. So people will come in to watch. The TV revenues will be high. Sponsorship will still get their value. So I think it's definitely worth having it, even if people can't come to the stadiums.
Okay, so let me ask Yannick to put a kind of a reality check on this, and he may concur with you, he may differ. We'll find out. So suppose we have an IPL. It will be behind closed doors. That's the way I see it. I don't think we'll have a situation where there are 40, 50,000 screaming fans all allowed into the stadium, unless there's a dramatic improvement in this whole COVID scenario. And in all likelihood, we'll have a truncated tournament. We may not have the full season, or we'll have a situation where we have 3 matches on a day instead of 2, and it's all packed in. It's all kind of very high intensity. Now, wearing a sponsor's hat, Yannick, what would be your approach to the IPL from a holistic marketing perspective? Do you think it still would it excite people, sponsors, marketeers, etc., to say, as Dheeraj mentioned, we've got sports back, we've got IPL back, and then everything kind of springs from there and it becomes really exciting for everybody in the ecosystem? Or let's do it with a lot of caution and circumspection. How do you see it?
Yeah, so I completely concur that, getting events of this sort back in for sports fans is great. It helps create, sports is all about community. It's all about, the live action, unscripted action. That entertainment element it brings into people's lives, helps bring people together. I think the value that adds is significant. And I think that in itself is a tremendous thing that it could actually bring by getting live sport back. I do think that economically, and this is for different people, different sponsors, different broadcasters, the reality is the world has changed. The world in Jan 2020 and the world today is significantly different. Your consumption of products is down, GDP is down. So, if you were spending 100 because your anticipation was that, you would be able to sell so many products, your brand visibility would go up. That's changed. The economics of it has changed. My advice to every single person who has a sponsor, a marketing partner would be, sit across the table and, be transparent. Don't ignore the fact that, everything's going to be hunky-dory immediately. It's not. Accept the fact that a sponsor's challenges, accept the fact that, the team has challenges. The team has to make payments also. BCCI has to make payments. BCCI doesn't withhold any money. But you've got to sit down and accept the fact that there's a different reality today than there was, however big the tournament is, whether it's a 30-day tournament, whether it's a 60-day tournament, whether it's one game after the other, it's a different reality. And I think that's going to be important, not just for big events like the IPL. It's going to be for every single sports federation everywhere in the world. Dheeraj and Joy were talking about international cricket boards being broke. The reality is that if India stopped touring 2 years ago, they would be broke then also. So this may be actually not all of them, some of them. This may actually be a wake-up call to everyone and a lot of sports federations the world over to actually try and build business models which are sustainable rather than dependent on one single country or one single, event which happens. Build sustainable business models like basketball has, the NBA has, like football has. The EPL is far more successful than the Argentinian Premier League, but they still have, strong domestic business models which allow them to compete at the global stage.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very, very good, realistic view of looking at it. So, Joy, I'm coming down to my final round of questions, so I'll put Joy under the microscope a little bit. So there's always this panga, there's this tug of war between the ICC and the BCCI on some issue or the other, and also on the issue of the tax breaks that the ICC has been seeking for the 2021 World Cup that India is going to host. Now, and this is where the government ends up playing a crucial role. It's not just BCCI and ICC. Now, you were part of the Under 17 Football World Cup, FIFA World Cup, where the government had actually acceded to FIFA's demand for tax break because that's what they get all over the world when you were the project director. So, what is the issue now? Why should it not be also in other sports? What do you think needs to be done to ensure a smooth conduct of this tournament?
Okay, two things. Look, we did get a tax break. So, a couple of things. The tax break was applied by FIFA to the government of India in 2014 February, 7 months before even I joined. The then Secretary General of Football, AFF, had started the process. Okay, it took us 2.5 years of hard work. We actually got it in June 2017, barely 3 months before the tournament. Because tax breaks require a lot of time. The government needs to first accept it. It needs to be put forward in Parliament. Once it's put forward in Parliament, it needs to come back. A notification needs to be released, because just the government saying that they are giving a tax break, they can give you a letter. But unless there is a notification about it, the Commerce Ministry will not heed it. So, firstly, it's not a one-day process. It's never going to be a one-day process. It's not a one-day process. Having said that, the BCCI is in the best position to get a tax break. There's only one other issue, and which is that, remember one thing, that the government takes the position, which it took with us as well, that we will give you a tax break if you are not a commercial tournament. So, for example, we said we are an Under 17 World Cup. Whatever proceeds that are excess from that will come back to Indian football, as it did. Okay, and we provided for that situation. The tickets were priced at such a level that they didn't come to that. So the first thing was that it wasn't, in that sense, a commercial undertaking to make money by the government. Today, the Commerce Ministry will justifiably ask the ICC and the people on behalf of the BCCI who will be approaching the ICC, that is your tournament making money? If your tournament is making money in my part of the world, you should be paying me some money.
Correct.
So and remember one thing, this is not one ministry. And if there's anybody who's well connected to all the powers to be in the government of India and the administration of India, it's a cricket board, because they're the most powerful board, they're the most well connected board. So the point of it is, it's the worry and the problem is the fact that you can't get away with getting a full tax break because you are a tournament that is making a certain amount of money. And so the government will justifiably say, they said, okay, we can sweeten the pot for you a little. Maybe we won't take VAT from you, or we will not take GST from you, or we'll adjust something for you. But the government can't tell you that you are a charitable entity. Here it is, take all your money, to go ICC, go and take it. The Commerce Ministry will not even listen to the Sports Ministry. They will say that, boss, there's this much revenue is being generated in India. Why should some of it not come to the government of India's office? And I frankly find it difficult to then, turn around and say that, no, it's not.
Well, you've been through the grind, so you know it better than anybody else. But Dheeraj, and these are my last two questions, one to Dheeraj and then I'll follow up with Yannick. So, Dheeraj, Sports Minister Kiren Rijiju has said it is the government's prerogative to take a call on allowing the IPL to go ahead or not. It's not the BCCI's call. So does that kind of put the BCCI on the back foot, or is it just a matter of protocol? Are we reading too much into it? Are we not reading enough into it? What's your take?
Well, the fact is that whenever and wherever the IPL does take place, the government will play a crucial role because health and safety of anyone involved is, I think, the most important thing. And it goes without saying that BCCI and IPL will have to follow all advisories and protocols and follow it to the T. It is also important to observe and keep an eye every day on how much progress we made as a country in containing the virus and how much more is likely to spread. I think governments will also get involved because of the travel. Even though it's minimal travel, there is travel involved, and the government policies, interstate travel will also play a crucial factor. Also about the international players, you'll have to get involved with what their government rulings are, what they're trying to, whether they will be allowed to travel or not, whether it's safe. I don't know what the mandate in their countries would be. So I feel personally that given the times that we are in, and irrespective of what sector we are in, no steps can be taken without government approvals, without other civic bodies involved, because the time is such. But having said that, I think BCCI would go and take all permissions from the government. BCCI would get all clearances before they would think of hosting a tournament of this magnitude. So I'm sure the government clearance will be taken, and I mean it'll be something that helps everybody. It's, as Yannick was also saying, and we do need sport to go on. It is the harsh reality. So in this distressing times, disturbing times, the only positivity that's coming out is sports, because it's live, it's not scripted. It's all there, out there, and we need that.
Yeah.
We need the sense of winning, the sense of competition, the challenge, and I think it's just high time that we got back to sport.
Yeah, well put. I think all of us are waiting for that. So actually, I was going to throw this last question to everybody, but I'll restrict it to Yannick, because we need to get some questions also from the audience or those who are participating with us in this talk. So, and we're running out of time. So Yannick, Disney star chief Uday Shankar recently in an interview said that if people can't go to the stadium, which is likely or which is inevitable in the short run, it is fine. Viewers will embrace the new experience of watching it at home on TV or on their handset, and whichever other way, because broadcasters will figure out ways of creating and enhancing the atmosphere through technology. Now, there's a lot pinned on technology and the advancements of technology. How do you react to that? Do you think that's the new universe that is unfolding or will unfold in terms of sports consumption? Or do you think it's only restricted to the short term, next 6 months, 7 months, and then we go back to normal?
Yeah, I think it's, again, you can't predict the impact of COVID, but I think that's the new reality, right? And you have to plan for that. I completely agree with what you quoted Uday as saying, in a sense that it's the job of the stakeholders. I mean, let's be very honest, right? Even though you may not go to a game and watch it, having fans and the atmosphere around that is part of the viewing experience right now. Right? So watching a game with noise around, fan reaction, that's part of the viewing experience. So when you're asking a consumer now, the hundreds of millions of consumers, to change their viewing experience, you have to deliver something which either is the same level or better. I mean, it's I was just reading this article that the Japanese Football League is actually doing crowdsourced chants through technology, where they're actually going to have the teams source chants, and they're going to have loudspeakers and then play those chants out while a game is going live. So, there are going to be a lot of things that come up, and the big advantage that we have in the time that we are in is that technology does allow us to provide solutions to things like this. Technology does allow us to improve the atmosphere. Virtual VR helps a lot, and could be a solution. There could be augmented reality, which helps improve experiences. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge that I think every stakeholder has to kind of take on and say, how do I make sure that my fan experience when I go back is at the same level or better, knowing that the atmosphere is being sucked out of the actual live event.
Great. So, guys, thanks a lot for responding to all these questions. I've got a series of questions actually which we got from people who logged in. So let me throw them at you. We don't have too much time. Maybe 4 or 5, 6 questions we'll take. So one of the questions I've got is, how much do you think the TV rights holders negotiate broadcasting rights either for the ICC tournament or a bilateral series, even if it involves India? I don't know if I've understood this question right. Is what is the scope of negotiation for broadcast rights if it does not involve, say, a country like India? Is it easier, more difficult, or just not worth it? One of you all, anybody who's Joy, you want to go for that?
Look, I think all rights are worth something, and it's ridiculous to say that rights are worth nothing. It's never going to be. Rights you always have spectators. You even have. I think what they might be asking is that, do the guys who have now got a contract, suppose I have a contract and saying, okay, I have rights to Australian cricket for the next 3 years. Do I go and renegotiate given the fact that now the series, the atmosphere is different, there are no crowds in stadiums and all that? And I think some of that is going to happen. A lot of that is going to happen. And I think Yannick spoke about it very plainly right in the beginning. I think all pre-COVID conversations, even if you have signed a contract now to go and tell say a broadcaster or a sponsor put a gun to his head and say, boss, you agreed on this price, this is the price. All those will be thrown out of the window. The only logical way is to walk across the table and to say that, look, this is the circumstance now. The tournament is now going to be held without people. It's going to be a smaller tournament, maybe lesser cities. But I also probably can't afford to, you probably can't afford to pay me that much money. And if I've taken in advance, I probably can't afford to pay you back. So let's figure out a way that I can do a make good. This is the time for both sides. For all sides, A, to listen to each other, and B, is be sensible. Nobody is going to win any negotiations here. If somebody has won in negotiations, both have eventually lost, because if one of the boards closes down, it's no good for world sport. So my thing is be sensible.
George, just very quickly, and if you can answer it very briefly, maybe it was my misunderstanding. I think the issue is it's an ICC tournament vis-a-vis a series, bilateral series involving India. So what's the kind of power play involved?
So my simple question is, can the ICC tournament there had the place? Okay, can it be held? Yeah. If it can't be held, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to them who else is playing that period of time. It's a simple question. If the ICC tournament can be played, play it now, bully for everyone. If it can't be played, whether the Bangladesh Premier League or the Canadian Premier League or the Indian Premier League is playing at that point is not their business. Honest.
Let me ask a question to Dheeraj now. I think this is right up his street. In case the foreign travel restrictions don't relax, can the IPL still proceed with only Indian players? Is that a likely scenario?
I think it can. As I said, so we've debated this among the franchises, and I think we've had it's 5 or 6 franchises for and 2 or 3 against having it without foreigners. The only thing is, at this point of time, what are the options do you have? It's either you don't play the IPL or you play it with your international stars. And I think it's more value in playing the IPL. A lot of people have said, oh, it'll be a glorified Ranji. But where in a glorified Ranji match do you get a Dhoni, a Virat, a top Indian players playing? That's one. And secondly, as you said, the important thing is to get sport back. And if this is the way to do it, it's only temporary. It's not like if we don't have it now, you just lose out. Then next year it comes back as normal. So I think it's possible, and I think if this is the only option given, I think most franchises will take it.
Okay, great. So now I've just been given a reminder that I've got time only for one question more, and so the final question is for Yannick. Yannick, what would be the effect of COVID-19 on the associate cricket boards, considering priority will be towards the top cricket boards? India, England, Australia. This is coming from Palash Gosrani.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I mean, the associate boards, the same thing we talked about earlier, right? The business model of how boards function in the overall ecosystem has to be relooked. And the person who has to take the lead in that has to be the ICC, right? You have to be able to see that as you're doing allocation in terms of central funds, as you're looking at development, you've got to be able to see who needs what. And today, the reality is even pre-COVID, associates cricket boards didn't have any independent source of revenue outside of ICC events. And I'm talking about associate outside test play nations, right? So the challenge is going to be, and I think this is a good chance for the ICC and the cricket world to come together and say, what is our responsibility? Aside from the fact of, making, building the sports ecosystem in these 8-10 big cricket nations, what's our responsibility to the world of cricket? And how do we help these associate boards not just make teams for an ICC T20 event, but how do we create domestic cricket around that? How do we make sure that going forward in 5 or 10 years that they actually have a self-sustaining model, not relying on ICC? So I think that's going to be the challenge, and I think this is a good chance, with every tragedy there's a silver lining, and I think this is the kind of silver lining where people should actually sit together and say, now's the time for us to kind of figure out and get this business model of cricket correct.
Okay. I think, I've run through actually I had a lot more questions, but we run through the time. So thanks a lot, Yannick, Dheeraj, and Joy. I think it's been very incisive and insightful, at least for me. And I hope that, whatever the audience was looking for, they've also got some, something that they can take away from this webinar. It's a very crucial situation, as we all know, because of COVID-19 for the world of sport, and more so in India for cricket. So thanks a lot, guys, and whoever's been part of this webinar, thank you for joining in, and hope you're going to take something away. Just a reminder that the next webinar is about fan engagement. It's going to be on the new playbook for fans in the digital arena. I think that's becoming more and more important as we go ahead. So don't forget to tune in. The dates and the time will be released in due course. But that's going to be the next webinar, new playbook for fans in the digital arena. Thank you so much for everybody. And that's all for me. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Just want to round up with one little thing, though.
Yes,
The one promo that we had for this, in all this, was about, cricket in gentlemen's game in COVID times. So I just want to say there's a game for ladies as well, and they're doing fantastically. So don't forget them. So
Yes.
yeah, corrected, and our apologies to everyone who pointed them out, including Aarti Dabas. Thank you so much for pointing.
I think that's a very, it's a red flag raised with good reason, and we must take cognizance of that.
Right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.